Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all. Welcome to this Sunday service. Morning on Sunday, and our program this week is about a wonderful book just released under Building America, Immigrants, Stories of Hope and Hardship. Some ladies and gentlemen who are with us this morning are of the authors of this new book, and they contributed of their stories or the stories from their families, experience of immigration. We know that America is a land of immigration. We all are immigrants on this land. Only Native Americans can claim that they are not immigrants, although they themselves were target of violence and persecution and isolation and destruction. From my right side, Glenn, and then Ed, then on the left side, Rogers, Nancy, and finally Dr. Mary Assel, who was the main motivator behind this project. And I was reading, Mary, the introduction that you put for this book, and it is wonderful. It says it all. You describe the current situation that we as a nation are going through a tough time, and you use the word turmoil or turmoils. Which really explains the depth of the crisis that we are going through at this time. We have the crisis of coronavirus. It's a very serious, almost 200,000 people from our nation, unfortunately, so far, killed by corona, and is close to 1 million victims all over the world. Our nation and other nations is getting close to 1 million people who already died because of this virus, very vicious and deadly disease. But this is not the only crisis that we are suffering from. The crisis of climate change. I mean, our nation now, 3 big states are burning in California, Oregon, Washington, and it's just so sad. It's sad to see that the natures, the cities, the building, and more importantly, the people are victim of this fire. And we don't see that much attention of our political leaders on these issues. You saw that like last week, everything was in the White House about the peace agreement between Israel and United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. And we saw like President Trump was making like a big deal out of this. We know all this propaganda, political propaganda before the election is just politics, because yeah, it was good if we saw a peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, because The issue is there. The issue is between Israel and Palestinians. Never we had issue between Israel and Bahrain or United Arab Emirates. There are a bunch of dictators in Bahrain and United Arab Emirates. They never fought Israel. They never had any tension. They always had secret relationship were there. So there is nothing new. So what happened to the Israeli-Palestinian relationships? Tension is getting worse and things are getting more dangerous. So what is it that this all show off about? So we see that too much attention to the issues that they are fake and not real attention to 3 states are burning. And we are in denial. They are in denial. They don't want to even talk about environment and the crisis of climate change. And then another crisis is like racism. Racism is even worse than that coronavirus because it's damaging more, hurting more, bringing more vulnerability and embarrassment. So the story of this book is about the journey of immigrants who went through so many struggles and a process, a painful process, many of us. I mean, somebody like me, being lucky, I'm, a recent immigrant. I've been here in the United States for like 28 years now. My story was different because it was full of joy when I immigrated here because things were ready for me. I was invited the very first time, 1990, and 30 years ago, 2 years before moving for good. And that experience was attending an international interfaith conference in San Francisco. So wow, from Tehran to Istanbul, and then another flight to Frankfurt, and then landing in San Francisco. And it was before this fire. Now, unfortunately, the sky of San Francisco is filled with the smoke, and like during the day, it looks like a night. It's very dark now. But at that time, landing in San Francisco, good weather, nice, like a windy weather out of the airport, you feel you are in heaven. And then you go to Hyatt Regency Hotel for 1 week, everything is ready, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then, traveling in some other states, including Michigan, standing here at the Islamic Center of America, and they invited me. They said, well, we were looking for a sheikh, for an imam. You speak English, what if you move here? It took some time, about a couple of years, for me to make my final decision. And it was, struggling, getting visa and some details that I don't want to go through that. There are some struggles as well. But I'm saying in general, people like my situation didn't have to go through the torture, the suffering, the pains that many immigrants experience in their coming to this country and find opportunity and, work hard and go for education, have a job, starting contribution to the countries and, settled and have a lifestyle and settled in neighborhood. But in general, not everybody was like that. I went through this book and I really felt so sad for a majority of immigrants that they went through so much hardship to get to this country and to settle and to achieve what they achieve and to accomplish their accomplishment. So really, when I was reading these stories, I felt that a lot of people of immigrants, they really deserve the highest award because of their determination, their accomplishment, their success, their seriousness, their discipline, and the services that they offer to this country, to their family, and to their neighbor, to community, to entire nation. And this is something that should be appreciated and should be credited for. But unfortunately, the story of immigration still sad stories. These days, we know that the latest news about the immigrants and what is going on, and more deportation. And we are not, of course, defending illegal immigration. We are talking about even legal immigration, that even legal immigration has gone through so much difficulties, so many problems. So we are here to hear from everybody, to share everybody's stories, and probably we start from Mary, because you've been the main force driving us to the right direction, and the result is this book, saying congratulations to you, to everyone, for this document that is there, and everyone can order this book from Amazon. And please read, because these are 31 ordinary people, not necessarily presidents and congressmen and congresswomen, ordinary people, ordinary American people who migrated to this country, and they established life, and they achieved what they deserve as American dreams that they actually entitled because of their hard work, because of their education. But we are here to hear from you and the other friends about your stories, and we appreciate your presence here.
Thank you, Imam. First of all, maybe I was one of the driving forces, but this was a joint effort between Glenn and I, Glenn O'Cray, and together we struggled to put these stories together. We did everything we could to encourage people to write their story, because many people were reluctant, and some were even afraid for legal reasons to even write their stories. But we did. Glenn even had to interview people and write their stories for them. But it took a lot of work, a lot of editing, and we did it. And one of the main reasons we did it is so that, like the Imam said, so that everyone can see that what ordinary people go through, what every person in this country went through. And we went as far back as Nancy's ancestry that go back to the Mayflowers. So we have stories from people from all different backgrounds, all ethnic backgrounds, religions, who were, once they read the story of their own story and they found it to be something that might help someone else, they were driven to continue to promote their story and to let everybody know what their story is all about. And on the back of the book, you will also see that we have a direct affiliation with the ACLU. All royalties that come from this book, Glenn and I are not making any profit off of this book, neither are any of the authors. Everyone was more than willing to donate their royalty share to the ACLU and channel it through the Foundation for Immigrants. So checks are coming in from people who didn't even buy the book, and they're paying hundreds of dollars for me to send directly to the ACLU. And they write it out to them, and then I forward it to the ACLU. So the whole purpose is to help, like the Imam said, the immigrants who are in holding, who are legal and don't know why they're in holding. I don't think any of us can miss what we saw on television as far as maybe legal or illegal immigrants, but children held in cages. And that's what really drove us most. But we also wanted people to know what my ancestry, what her ancestry, what Ed's ancestry, what he went through, even after he'd been here for 26 years or 30 years almost, what he had to go through even last year as an immigrant. And he's not an immigrant, he's an American like everyone else. But if you get a chance to read his story, you will say to yourself, my God, when does this end? So there might be a sequel to this, because there's many more than 31 stories in this country, and we might continue to add to that and continue to let people know more about other people's stories, and people can come forward and share their stories anytime. And we might do another one on this, just because so many people are so interested in sharing their story, if their story is going to help someone else. And you don't have to be an immigrant, like the Imam said, go back to racism. You don't have to be an immigrant to suffer in this country nowadays. Like he said, climate change, it's like ignored. It's like it doesn't even exist. And like he said, 3 states are burning. When someone turns the other way, even people who are Republican, and a governor who is Republican is upset that climate change is no longer existing, so to speak. But that's what we have today, and that's what we hope we won't have in the future. But we can only pray that things will change. And I'm going to turn it over to Glenn.
It's rather symbolic that we have had a term that might be used to describe this week. The world has been on fire, and that is symbolic of a lot of things. It's symbolic of the wildfires out in California, Washington, and Oregon, and it also is symbolic of the state of the world right now. And we want to come to terms with that, and we want to do what we can to douse that fire somewhat. We were discussing a lot of issues here at the mosque, trying to get Christians and Muslims to relate to one another, and the whole issue of a book on immigrants developed. And this is the best thing since sliced bread. You will enjoy this book. It will perhaps douse some of the negative spirits that you might have in your life and in your neighborhood. Something else that happened in my neighborhood, I live in West Dearborn, around Military and Morley. We had several Joe Biden signs taken down that were erected. And it's just like there are negative fires going on that should be put out. Now, how does this relate to immigrants? And I said, well, part of the whole thing of building bridges is to learn about other people. Somehow it's easy to put all other people into certain classifications. All whites are like this, all Europeans are like this, all Muslims are like this, all Christians are like this. And this book gives you the opportunity to look at everybody as an individual. Let me make reference to a few of the stories that are in the book. Miklos Adler. I met his daughter in a restaurant in Livonia. She was my server, and I asked her life story. and she said, I don't have anything. And we chatted about her nothing for about 5 minutes. And then she said, oh yeah, my dad was a Holocaust survivor. Wow, that's heavy stuff. So I went and interviewed him, and he just had a story of a very difficult life in the concentration camp in Auschwitz. So, and he overcame all the hate that he saw there to become a good person here in the United States. What a great story. our local county commissioner, Sam Beydoun, has his story. He's a great guy, and he came to the U.S. not knowing any English, and one of his first instructors when he went to Henry Ford College was my dear colleague here. And so he has a good story. We have a fellow by the name of George Smith who immigrated from England, and then he came to Canada and then to the United States. And he was always in trouble in school as a youngster. And at the age of 15, his dad said, "You shouldn't be in school, you might as well drop out." So he did, and he went to a trade school in England, and he immigrated to North America, and he had only ridden in a car once. Think about that. And he had no concept of ever being able to buy a car. Well, ultimately, he became a captain of industry, and when he retired, he was supervising, I think, 60,000 people. How cool is that? Another gentleman, Samir Leon of Leon's Restaurant. He came to the United States with the idea of getting a degree in engineering, and he got into the restaurant business instead. And one of the cute anecdotes in the book was he was working as a busboy at a restaurant, big boy restaurant, and he couldn't get his car into drive one day, so he drove in reverse all the way, I think it was 9 miles to his restaurant. So now his kind of claim to fame in the area is that he gives out free dinners at Thanksgiving to thousands of people. We love that sort of thing. So my bottom line is that on this book, it teaches us to look at people as individuals. And you say, Glenn O'Cray, well, what is your story? Well, here's one of the interesting anecdotes, in my humble opinion. All my anecdotes are good, but I don't have a history. My parents suppressed all discussion of their heritage in my household. I know that we are, you're going to learn a new word here, Kashub. They came from the border of Poland and Germany, and I believe it was Prussia at that time. And so one of my goals in life is to go to that part of Europe and find out more about my heritage and what makes me tick. But again, it's to find out about different individuals so that we can all treat each other as individuals and find out about myself as well.
Ed, would you like to tell us your story? First of all, I'd like for you to tell us more, like what made you give us the title.
Well,
because we brainstormed. Ed and I worked together at the Language Institute, and we serviced 86 different nationalities, and so we know what immigrant students, foreign students feel when they come to this country. So
Not knowing language and
not knowing the language and
not
knowing if they're going to stay or go or.
Yeah.
well, my wife, Martha, whose poem is near the beginning of the book, and I looked at some possibilities. I think the editor sent us a list of maybe these would work, and I'm afraid we both thought not quite. So we wanted to identify the content of the book, which is building America and immigrant stories, and certainly the contrast of hope and hardship in so many of the stories. So that was a
beautiful title.
we worked
Very
our way
good.
through it,
Well.
several possibilities along the way. And for me, having taught immigrant and foreign students in the United States and abroad for over 30 years, I've grown particularly aware of the importance of ancestry and the passing down of legacy within families. And I'm aware that within some cultures, the memory of ancestors' death dates is more important than the memory of their birth dates. And I've also witnessed how easy it is within one generation for immigrants as they become Americans to lose touch with their heritage, especially If a second or third generation no longer speaks the language of their grandparents and never has the opportunity to visit relatives in their country of origin. And if immigrants fled their native countries under circumstances, they often choose not to speak of the past. In time, as was my case, we entirely lose track of our ethnic heritage, which is not uncommon with so many various ethnicities who intermarry in this country. Until a few years ago, I was vaguely aware of my mother's ancestry, but knew nothing of my father's. That discovery has become a special treasure for me, and so I hope this book may inspire others to share their life stories and be proud of how their lives have contributed to society.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you.
Nancy?
My turn. The first sentence in my piece is, I have no immigration story. And the truth of the matter is that everybody from whom I came here sometime in the 16 or 1700s, mostly from Wales or from Britain. I only know this because of recent years I've gone into my family ancestral research for some writing projects and written a memoir and some poems about that. But in the course of this, I've realized what is the really true American character is not just those people who were here for 500 years, but the people who have come to help build the country. I've been so fortunate to teach at Henry Ford College for a long time and have a diversity of students, and their stories come through their writing. But I would also say that their stories resonate from a historical context of storytelling that everybody back into as early as we can think of, even before writing happened, like Beowulf was a storyteller. You get a storyteller from village to village to village. It's the impulse to share that story regardless of what it is. So I think that this impulse is in all of us, and I continue to feel very strongly about embracing the stories of others and also sharing mine. And just on a side note, mine has not been that comfortable because I come from the American South. So as we know, racism is and has been a virulent problem since the 1600s when we first brought enslaved people here. And I've had to address the fact that I come from people who, some of whom, not all of whom, some of whom participated in this human atrocity. So how do I reconcile that? So my story and stories have come from that, but I also feel that I am so open and excited to hear stories of others. I believe that the country is only going to be made stronger with the emphasis on building, not destroying, but building America by its diversity, by our listening to others and talking to others and hearing other stories. And I think the book will do this. And Mary has taught me a great deal too across our ethnic and background differences. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from you. And I continue to learn, and I hope that all of you will participate by purchasing the book and supporting this effort.
Very good,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Right. So, good points, actually. I think everybody said it, that the message of this book is diversity, that diversity makes this country dynamic and more powerful. As you mentioned, that the heritage, you or the ethnic heritage that every community, every immigrant carries with her or with him, the values that different people bring through immigration, the traditions that they bring, the hardship, all together make the country more powerful. So really this country cannot survive without the the blood of the fresh, start and fresh blood of immigration that's coming to this country, and bring their contributions. And this is a powerful message that to make America great is not to make more walls around the country, but to build more bridges between our nation and people who have passion for progress, people who have dreams, people who are looking for opportunities, people who are determined to change their life. And this kind of people, that they have really motivation in their life, and they come and they bring more life and more enthusiasm, more movement, and they contribute a lot, become part of the family. So yes, the message of the book is that through our unity and working together and showing more understanding and more empathy, that is the way for making America great. Not through the policies of fear and scaring and denying and arrogance and racism. This kind of policies make America smaller, may make America more isolated, make America weaker. So the immigrants, they came to teach with example, through their actions and through involvement of their family, working hard, men and women as a family, to educate themselves. And so I think that if we have this sense of unity, this awareness, understanding that really the difference between all of us who are sitting sharing this table is just the color of our skin. And after that, I mean, how much is this? The color is like not even half a centimeter. That is all differences. If we pass this skin, whatever is inside, we are all the same color, the same color of our blood, and every organ in our body is the same format and operates the same way. So how can we really, as Martin Luther King said, that people judge based on the character and not the skin color? I hope that we can promote, work on this culture, bring more education, bring people together from different parties, different political orientation and affiliation. That makes this country great, and that is the right thing to do. So that's what we can say. But please continue with any other input on this that you may have.
I agree, because personally I can say that among my own children, I have one daughter that has darker olive skin than the other daughter, and she's been targeted in her life. So here I am, I have two daughters. Her husband doesn't even understand. Her husband is very light skin and red hair and whatever, and he's like, what do you mean they're looking at you? What do you mean they said that to you? And her husband doesn't understand, because like the Imam said, if you try not to look at the color of one's skin and look at what's inside, you won't distinguish among people. You won't say, Ed's daughter, who is Korean, and he had to pay a price with people from down south who gave him a hard time because she wasn't like him. She didn't look like him. That's a very difficult feeling to go through. Like if I walk with my kids, why are you stopping my son or my nephew? Blonde hair, blue eyes, and my other cousin, dark hair, dark eyes, go to Canada. My nephew, they don't say a word to him. They tell him, you can go, call your dad and you can go, but this one we're gonna hold here. And my uncle had to go in the middle of the night to pick up his son because he didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. So that's hard. That's difficult. There's a lot of things that are going on that if we can look past the word immigrant and just see people for who they are. No immigrant comes to this country to put his hand out. Every immigrant that comes to this country with the intent to work. And they all work. And many of them have worked more than others, more than even the locals, and have made quite a fortune. And many have just lived the peaceful life where they're not targeted because of the color of their skin, where they're not targeted because their religion or whatever it is that they get targeted for in their own countries. If they're communists, they had to run away from Albania to come here so that no one would talk to them and they wouldn't be bothered. If they're from Iran and right after the Shah, a lot of them came here because they didn't want to be targeted. A lot of people came here to find peace. And that's what the majority of these people in this book will tell you. They came to this country not to put their hand out. They came to this country to help build this country.
And I'm glad that you put also hope and hardship. This is a good balance. To have hope matters a lot. I think not to give up. And this is what immigrants did in general. That despite of stereotype and discrimination and bigotry and injustice that they went through, but many of them did not give up. And they were determined, willing absolutely to succeed, to show that it's possible to succeed despite of all. And this word of hope, I hope that, in coming election, we as a nation make a better decision. I know that unfortunately we don't have a perfect candidate all over in general, but at least to have a better judgment and think about human rights, think about racism, think about American family, think about more unity and solidarity. I was telling my wife the other day that I said that based on the policies that the president is exercising now, he could not be married with his wife today. I mean, his wife could not come to this country under Trump traditions and regulations, right? He would be single by now if he want to go with his laws and regulations, but there is always hope. Last week, there was something in the news that finally the police department, which city was that lady, African-American lady, was killed by mistake by the police. Taylor was her name?
Yeah.
Right, and now the police department, I think the court is concluding of giving the family of $12 million. These are signs of hope that in this country, I mean, no matter of the mess and misery that even in my own story, as Dr. Mary mentioned, I mean, I've been in this country for 28 years and always as a peacemaker, an ambassador of peace, always being part of interfaith gatherings. And as a matter of fact, interfaith is like a main focus, even as an organization, Islamic House of Wisdom. In the history of 28 years, every day, some kind of interfaith interaction between us and local churches or nationwide. But still, when I was coming just last February from a peace conference, interfaith conference from Seoul, South Korea, and I was not coming even from Iran to say, oh, you are coming from Iran and we have to, investigate you. I was coming from because, originally being Iranian, always there's a suspicion, but coming even from the Korea, and they kept me for almost 4 hours at the airport, and checking on my cell phone, and hours of being waiting me at the. As a matter of fact, when the airplane landed, before opening the gate, they called my name that you introduced, and when I came, I saw 2 officers that are already waiting for me. So that is ridiculous of wasting time and wasting resources against somebody who loves this country and chose to live here. I was not even forced. That was my choice. And my way is an interfaith and always anti-terrorism, anti-violence. We were the first one to say Muslims against ISIS. That's been our way from day number one. But still, you see this kind of wrong approach and anti-immigration policy and racism and prejudice. This is painful. So we have the pandemic of COVID-19 and then the pandemic of prejudice. And we have the disease of discrimination. And the story of this book helps more education for general people. And God bless you I know you had so many dialogue in this room and other places, and finally you came with this wonderful idea. Hopefully this will continue, and you or other people will focus on the stories of immigrants and bring more light and more life, more solidarity, more love, more brotherhood, and more cooperation among our nation. So America stays as an example, stays as an inspiration for other people. That's not something is going on in our political situation, but we always have hope.
I want to say one more thing. Thank you, Imam, for saying things the way they are. I'd like to thank the people who gave us kind of like a good review, especially knowing what the book was about. Nabil Abraham, Susan DeBeja, and Jack Tate. Nabil also worked at the college with us and has published several books. And Susan DeBeja is our city council, the city council of Dearborn. And Jack Tate, the curator of the Dearborn Historical Museum. And I also would like to thank our authors for giving their stories, and specifically the publisher. Thank you for Nancy for introducing the publisher to us. Steve Gerhardt, you would want to read his story. He was impressed with the whole notion that, and he's from Alabama, by the way, that we were going to donate all royalties to the ACLU, and he said, I too will give you a break on the cost of publishing and everything, because I too would like to donate to the ACLU. So you would like to read his story. His story's in this book as well, and many others. There's Vicky Colias, Connie Hines, Diane Luxton, many local authors. Olga, oh my God, you would really like to read her story. She's got a lot going for her, especially because she's a poet and a writer and all that. And no one came to this country just to come to this country. They came to give, and hopefully we will receive.
Continue, and we hope that those of you brothers and sisters who are watching this program from Facebook, YouTube, and any other channels that you are experiencing, to send us your comment. If you have any note, or if you have your own story of immigration, the pains and problems that you went through of your own personal or family immigration, please share it, especially on the Facebook, so we can read it, other people can read it. So your comment always are welcome. If we have any other comment
I
from
just want to say that I think
Right,
there's got to
right.
be a sequel or two coming.
No, not just one.
Or two, I said two. Because this sounds
You can,
like it's
you can
evolving.
follow us on Twitter. You can also, Building America. You can follow us on Facebook. We have our author page. You can follow us, my website, marysl.com. We are in the process. We're putting together other videos, and we're in the process of promoting. So you can just Google my name or Glenn's name, and a lot of things will come up.
Very good, very good.
And how do we get that book again?
And go to Amazon. You can go to Amazon.com, and you can just put the name of the book, and it'll pop up.
Rajas, please feel free if you have a word to say.
Oh, I thought it was, I'd like to see more of that myself. Even though I've been in this country all my life, and my family's been in this country all their life, and I go back probably close to when her family came over, so it's hard to tell. It's been great. This get together, my wife has been great, but it's always just wonderful. I truly think that this book is a great thing. As a matter of fact, I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to.
You know, I should comment too that this actually grew out of Henry Ford, what was community college. Everybody here, all four of us were faculty.
Yeah,
or some
faculty
other-
at the college.
And that's a powerful seed to plant, I think.
Glenn and Ed, do you have any final comments would like to share?
Remember sliced bread, and that this is better than.
And there will be two, at least two sequels.
Yes, at least two sequels.
Now, what if I tell you I don't like sliced bread? So
This is
gonna
better
be
than a warm bun.
And Ed?
Nothing more.
Well, thank you very much for participation, and thank you for watching. We'll continue this journey, building America, immigrant stories of hope and hardship. We never give up our hope, and we never stop working hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam.